Welcome, everybody. We're going to start with Marta Hernandez, Executive Director of Californians Together.
Thank you, Manuel, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marta Hernandez, Executive Director for Californians Together. We are a coalition of organizations who come together to promote equitable English learner education policy and practice. I think before I officially begin this webinar, I do want to mark this time in history. It took too long, and it took a village from those who videoed to those who testified and to those who stepped up and uplifted their voices and took to the streets, but justice has been served. However, it's one down and many more to go. La lucha sigue. And so now I welcome you officially to our community of practice focused on supporting English learners through LCAP planning, lessons from distance learning, and opportunities to close gaps. This webinar highlights the need for districts to prioritize English learners in their LCAPs. We know that English learners are some of California's most historically marginalized students and among the most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that the pandemic has exposed long-standing systemic inequities in education. It exacerbated existing alarming gaps for English learners. And so this community of practice will provide an overview of the recommendations from our report, Teaching and Learning During Uncertain Times, which reviewed the learning continuity and attendance plans of 41 school districts. These recommendations serve to inform district decision-making as 3-year LCAPs are developed. And so as districts continue to manage the COVID-19 crisis and plan for a recovery, they also have a unique opportunity to create a more robust system to meet English learner needs. So next slide, please. Today's session will begin with a presentation from Californians Together. We will also be highlighting examples from 2 districts, including strategies for supporting multilingual family engagement in district planning and ELD intervention strategies to help English learners over the next 3-year LCAP cycle. Following the presentation, each of you will join a breakout room to reflect upon the information shared and to share best practices and recommendations in moving forward planning for the LCAP. We'll return as a whole group to hear from a panel who will share promising practices to plan for LCAPs and answer questions from the chat room. This session is being recorded, and the recording and the PowerPoint will be sent to you after the webinar. So next slide, from our CalTalk, from Californians Together, our presenters are Manuel Buenrostro, our Policy Associate, and Shilonin Cruz Gonzalez, our Deputy Director. From Whittier Union High School, we have Francisco Mesa, Director of Federal and State Categorical Programs. And from Calexico Unified, we have Sylvia Yanes, English Learner Director. And so at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Manuel and Shilonin.
Thank you, Marta, and thank you for the words on this important date as we all have awaited and prayed and thought about what has been happening over the last couple of years. But for this presentation, we're going to focus mainly on the recommendations that are in our learning continuity and attendance plan report, where we reviewed 41 district learning continuity and attendance plans. You can read the full report, get more details on the findings, and get more information if you find the report on our website. Next slide. So the information that we're going to cover today includes lessons from the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan report. Our main focus, as I said before, is going to be to focus on implications for districts in our 2021 and 24 LCAPs. But I would also consider these implications for any district planning and for any strategies that we should be thinking about as we start reopening and as we think about how we educate our students moving forward. And like Marta said, we're also going to have time for 2 districts to share some of their strategies and what they're doing to support families and English learners. Next slide. So very quickly, so for the learning continuity and attendance plan review that we did a few months ago, this report was released in March. For this, we reviewed the LCP reports for 41 school districts, selected based on multiple factors, including districts that had the highest number of English learners, highest percentage of English learners, and then also districts that we had reviewed in previous LCAP reviews that we had done. They represent districts that are large, medium, and small. There's a mix of unified high school and elementary school districts, and they also represent 21 different counties across the state, and a good percentage of both total California students and a good percentage of total number of California English learners. Next slide. So as we reviewed the reports, we were thinking about what does this mean for the education system moving forward? What can we learn from what we're seeing in distance learning that should inform how we think about reopening and how we think about structuring the next couple of school years so that our students get the education that they deserve. And this led us to two main areas of recommendations. The first area of recommendation that we developed from the report is around making sure that we beef up how we conduct outreach for English learners and their families and any district planning process. So this is just making sure that we continue to support districts and expand district ability to conduct outreach that is linguistically and culturally competent, making sure that all communications to families continues to be translated, but not just translated, making sure that it's done in a way that is culturally relevant and in a way that the families can receive that information. And also a big part of this, as you know, within the district planning, is that we need the staff to be able to carry these things out. So we need to make sure that with any district planning process, as you all know, as you're planning for your LCAPs and you're beginning to plan, I'm sure you're already planning for your expanded learning opportunity grants, making sure that you have staff is important that can speak the languages of the different EL families in the districts, making sure that new technology can be leveraged, especially during these times, so that there's authentic two-way communication with our families to get their feedback and incorporate what they're telling us. So that's the first bucket of recommendations. The second area of recommendations are around what we would hope to see in description, plans, and funding that would be drafted in the 3-year LCAP. This includes recommendations, again, for family engagement, strategies to accelerate learning. This actually used to be strategies to address learning loss, and it's important that we start thinking about this in a more assets-based language, making sure that we think about it in a more positive way. So strategies to accelerate to accelerate learning seems to be a more appropriate way of thinking about that. There's also a set of recommendations around professional learning and what we would hope to see for the professional learning for all educators within a district, including teachers, counselors, and other school staff. Recommendations around staff hiring and placement, and a comprehensive plan to deliver high quality curriculum for English learners. And finally, targeted strategies to meet the specific needs of the different typologies of English learners. So for this, we particularly focused on dual language learners in the early grades. We focused on long-term English learners for those districts and schools that serve secondary grades, and also making sure that we are meeting the needs of our newcomer students for all of the grades. Next slide. So what I'll do briefly is talk about each of the recommendations. Shalini is going to jump in and talk a little bit about what we're seeing in some district practices that we would consider to be promising practices for us to think about. But starting with the area of family engagement, our two big recommendations here are to make sure that within the LCAP, that there's plans and descriptions for how the districts are providing opportunities for family professional learning. This is very important as we think about what we learned from distance learning. Nearly 40% of districts had weak or no evidence in our review of LCPs for how they were providing families with strategies to support learning at home. So this is an area for growth. It's an area that we know is needed during distance learning, but it's an area that we also think is needed as schools reopen and as we think about what needs to happen to make sure that learning is accelerated and understanding that there's definitely a role for families to play and making sure that the education of our English learners is accelerated during these times. And then the second recommendation under family engagement is making sure that there's descriptions and plans and goals for how two-way stakeholder engagement will be conducted and evaluated. Again, we want to make sure that as we do family engagement, that it's two-way, which means that it's not just pushing out information to families, but taking in the information that they're giving us and incorporating that within the plans that districts are providing so that we are meeting their needs in real time. It also means that making sure that as we do outreach to families, making sure that that outreach is being done to the wide diversity of families that are in our districts. So something that we found in our review of learning continuity plans is that about 17% of districts had weak plans for how they were incorporating feedback into decisions. Happy to say that all districts talked about how they incorporated feedback in decisions, but it's definitely an area of continued focus as we think about the needs as we reopen. Next slide.
And we just want to highlight a couple of examples that we saw. And I know that similar practices are happening across the state, but just to highlight some of the things that you can think about doing. And the first thing I want to highlight is Glendale Unified, because they, in this past year in their learning continuity plan, put money behind and focused on hiring attendance clerks that they had at schools. Can you imagine that each school had 4 attendance clerks, and their job was to do weekly check-ins with students and families, right? So this is a district that really prioritized that individual one-on-one communication and outreach. And you saw it through the staffing that they have these attendance clerks. They also were really focused on how do they support the parents through support groups and other supports. Similarly, in Redwood City, we saw that they are focused very, very much on supporting parents in the learning process, right? So they developed a series of webinars that were offered in multiple languages so that their families could understand not only they could understand how to help their students with learning, right? I think that's one of the things that we've often seen is that parents are struggling. We're now asking them to be partners in the learning, but districts aren't always thinking about how can we actually support the parents and give them the tools to be able to do that. So that's something to think about even as you come back in person and reopen and try to accelerate learning. The parents are now have become accustomed of being engaged in this learning process. And so this is an area to think about how do you continue to capitalize on their eagerness and willingness to be part of the learning process. So those are 2 examples. And I just want to point out that if you actually download the report, we have additional examples, and we collate at the very end of the report all of the specific examples that we think would be helpful for LCAP development. So let's go to the next slide.
So the next set of recommendations in the report are around strategies that we hope would be in the LCAPs around making sure that we are accelerating learning for students. So for this, there's a few different aspects of this. The first one would be making sure that there's additional opportunities for students to learn, particularly for English learners and for other at-risk students that the districts might identify. This is already something that we know districts are planning for, again, in the expanded learning opportunity grants that they're receiving to provide additional opportunities over the summer and also additional opportunities during the school year. So it's an area that definitely we know districts are thinking about. We continue to hope that there's a focus on English learners and making sure that these additional opportunities are project-based and also multifaceted and multidisciplinary and incorporate the different subjects that engage students in real-world learning opportunities. The other recommendation is making sure that we are thinking about our early grade students and incorporating thoughtful supports for first grade students that we know missed kindergarten, or even if they attended kindergarten, they did not experience the full experience of what it's mean to be a kindergartner during a regular school year. So we want to make sure that we have supports for our first grade students and early grade students because we know that orientation in a new school and making sure that they feel comfortable and understand what school is like is important for these students. Something from the LCP report that we learned is that nearly 1 in 4 districts did not mention any minimum time for weekly live instruction for students. Doesn't mean that they were not offering it, but it wasn't explicitly mentioned what that minimum expectation was. So we do know that some students might have missed some learning time. And as we think about our English learners, we know that ELD is something that was often missing for some of them, or at least they missed out on opportunities to practice the language. Then the final recommendation around strategies to accelerate learning is around evaluation of the effectiveness of the different attendance strategies. So districts throughout the state did have monitoring strategies for tracking attendance and tracking student engagement. I think a missing piece was making sure that there's an evaluation of how effective they are and how that follow-up and information and data that is collected would inform interventions and instruction. So 46% of districts that we reviewed did not mention how attendance monitoring would inform EL learning specifically. So again, as we're looking at attendance monitoring and different monitoring systems, we want to make sure that there's a specific focus on what this does mean for our English learners. And I'm going to hand it back to Shilonin, who's going to talk a little bit about some examples.
Thank you. And then on the next slide, very briefly, just 2 examples to highlight, one from San Diego Unified and one from Mesa Unified. So in San Diego, we picked this example just to think about, like, how do you, a lot of districts are trying to think about how are we going to assess for learning loss? How are we going to identify where gaps are for students, right? And so we wanted to highlight this as an example because from the outset last year, San Diego Unified created a very comprehensive approach to how they were going to think about not only sort of assessing where students are, right? So they had assessments, they're focusing on the LCAP. They were also included teacher observations around oral interaction, other documentation that you have. But the most important part is that it was the focus, the thrust of their plan, right? The point of the plan was to think about how can they accelerate learning, right? And accelerating learning, and we really want to impress this on everyone, right? We want people to get out of this mindset of thinking about we need to have interventions, right? We hear examples of districts that are thinking about, okay, we're gonna do some really interesting summer school programs where we give some students activities like project-based activities, but then we're going to give them a section of intervention. We really want to recommend you think about like framing your entire approach around accelerated learning, which is not about finding the gaps and trying to fill those gaps. It's more about knowing where kids have to be and trying to catch them up to there. It's a very different approach than how we generally often default to in schools. So we did want to just highlight that as an example from San Diego Unified. And there are other examples out there around accelerated learning. I recommend looking at the New Teachers Project, who's come out with a really great toolkit around accelerated learning. The other example that we want to highlight, just going back to the issue about students who maybe sat out in TK and kindergarten and are now entering school, especially those first graders who this may be their first time in formal schooling. Some places, for example, this Unified is planning to offer like a mini boot camp that'll start a couple of weeks early before school starts. They're calling it Camp ABC, and it's really focused on giving those first graders that time to sort of the socialization that usually happens in kindergarten over the entire school year, but giving them that space to feel comfortable in school and understanding routines, all the pieces that we expect incoming first graders to have, but they may or may not just because they were not in school all year long and or maybe weren't even in school at all. So those are 2 examples that we want to share in terms of how to think about accelerated learning. And I just want to impress, I think this is like a key piece in terms of thinking about how are we going to push our kids back to where we think they would have been if we had been in person over this past year. So on the next slide, Manuel is now going to talk a little bit about professional learning.
Okay, so the next set of recommendations that are around investments in the LCAP or descriptions and plans for the districts to provide professional learning. For this, we include professional learning in a variety of areas that we consider to be very important to meeting the needs of all students and particularly important for English learners. The first one is making sure that there's preparation for all educators to support English learners. And again, for this one, we mean all educators that interact with English learners throughout the school day and throughout the year. So this means that to make sure that there's time for teachers to collaborate, both English learner teachers and other subject area teachers to collaborate, so that English learners receive both designated ELD and integrated ELD within their subject matters. And so there's that communication amongst teachers about how, for example, a science teacher can support their English learners so that they can grasp the content knowledge. 70% of districts did not mention educator PD to support ELs at all in their LCPs. So it definitely was an area of concern that we saw slightly for some districts. We also, again, I want to emphasize ELD professional learning for all teachers. So this again is making sure that our content area teachers also receive PD on how to deliver strategies so they can deliver integrated ELD within all subjects so that our English learners are supported and get the full range of the curriculum so they get a well-rounded education. About 22% of districts did not mention ELD professional development in their plans. So that is something of concern there. And then the last two areas are very important. I think these last two recommendations around PD are foundational to making sure that our students are ready to learn and that we meet their needs. The first one is making sure that there's development, that there's professional development around cultural proficiency and competencies for all staff within a school and within a district. Half of districts did not mention PD on cultural proficiency or competencies in their LCP report. It wasn't necessarily required, but it's something that given the climate that we are in, and also given the fact that we are, it's one of our strengths, we are the most diverse state in the country, and we have a wonderfully diverse student population. It's important that our staff, educators, district staff understand cultural proficiency and competencies and how they set up programs, and also on how we deliver instruction to English learners. And then the last recommendation is around strategies for promoting social-emotional learning and also protecting students' mental well-being. We know that over the past year, a lot of our families have gone through some trauma. There's been a lot of tough situations that our students might have gone through because of the pandemic and because of other factors. We have to make sure that we continue to structure our schools in a way that meets our students' needs. And we know that a lot of districts have made great strides in this area because they've recognized the need over the last year. So we hope that this continues to be an investment that districts make as we think about the next 3 years. And back to Shilonin.
Thanks. And just a couple quick examples. First, we want to highlight Franklin McKinney, which is up in the Santa Clara County area. So I think many districts are focusing on professional development, and we really encourage you to think about this as an opportunity. A lot of districts are talking about recovery. How do we recover better? We don't want to go back to what we were before. That really can't happen unless we are providing supports and training to those who are going to deliver these changed approaches to instruction, right? So really think deeply about how you're embedding culturally responsive strategies, focusing on English language development across all of your teachers. And Franklin McKinney did that. They had a great example in their LCP, just how they did that. The other example we want to point is San Diego Unified, who is really thinking very thoughtfully about how are they going to ensure that students were going to get both integrated and designated English language development. And so they've developed a push-in model that really builds on supports educators in the classroom, but then also provides additional support because they'll have co-teachers that push into the classrooms to support teachers and help them build out designated integrated English language development strategies. So just two examples for that. And next we'll move on to thinking about different typologies of English learners.
Thank you. We continue to also advocate for making sure that we look at the specific needs over different English learners. Even within the English learner student group, we know that there's a lot of diversity. So again, as we think about English learners, we want to make sure that our districts are making specific plans for how they're going to meet the needs of their newcomer students, and how we're going to make sure that they are taken care of and that we meet their needs so that they're ready to learn. We want to make sure that there's plans for meeting the specific needs of our long-term English learners, which do encompass 80% or more of our secondary English learners. So it's another important area for districts that serve secondary students to be thinking about. And also for any district that serves elementary school students, how they're delivering early support in the student's home language to meet the needs of dual language learners, so that their home language is being leveraged as an asset, and they're also able to learn English at the same time. So these are very important factors for us to think about. We have recommendations for each of these 3 different types of student groups, but also one important goal that we have is we want districts to be thinking about specific differentiated growth targets and goals and supports for these students. We know that these are unique students with unique needs, and we want to make sure that there's specific goals for them so that they're not lost within a system. And then I'll hand it over to Shilonin, who's going to talk about how 2 districts are meeting some of these needs.
Right, and so we're going to highlight both the 2 different types of English learners. One, thinking about newcomers. Oakland Unified has always been very supportive, especially of their high school newcomers, and they've gotten quite a few in recent years. So they've been really thoughtful about how they are providing additional supports, not only through instruction and providing additional assistance that can help them with small group instruction, but also thinking about the social needs of those students. And so being able to bring in and support newcomers, social workers that focus just on newcomers and their families that can help them access resources. And this is actually something to think about for districts as you just in general, like how do we pull in social workers to schools? Something that you see more often in other states that have more funding than we do, but I think more and more districts in California are realizing this is a need. And this, I would just encourage you to think about. This is a good place to have a conversation with your county departments of public health as they think about how they're realigning their supports for schools. This may be a place for alignment. The second place we're going to highlight again is Azusa, because going back to their early childhood. So really thinking about like the specific needs of dual language learners in the early years, right? They're bringing in the Sobrato Early Academic Language Program. So they'll be using, Sobrato actually released a couple, have a really comprehensive summer bridge unit that they have available on their website, and will be highlighted in a website that a different community practice that we're doing in a couple weeks. But they'll be using those with those students to be able to give them enriching, joyful, fun ways to learn, instead of, again, thinking about that interventionist approach, right? So this is going to make summer learning fun for these little kids. And then we'll go to the next slide, and Manuel will wrap up the recommendations for the last 2 sections.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna go. So for the purposes of time, I'll just briefly say we have recommendations around staff hiring and placement, and the next slide has recommendations around high quality, how we can deliver high quality curriculum for ELs to make sure that we monitor their needs and deliver ELD. You can get all of the recommendations in our report on the learning continuity and attendance plans. It's available on our website. We'll post it on the chat shortly as well. All of these recommendations you can find in the appendix of the report. There's an appendix that is about 3 pages that summarizes all of the recommendations, and they're also incorporated throughout the report. So please feel free to download the report, take a look at it, and we hope that it helps inform how your district is planning around the 2021-24 LCAPs, and also how you're thinking about any other programs that your districts might be establishing over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and then I just to add one more thing, because we really want you to think about your LCAPs, right? I mean, there are going to be additional dollars that you're planning around the AB 86 dollars and the federal ESSER dollars that are coming into districts, but this really is an opportunity for districts to rethink what they have in their LCAP, right? You've had a break for a year where we didn't have an LCAP. You've had new things happen in your districts. So it's really important to sort of take a step back and make sure that you're thinking about and not just roll over what you did 2 years ago in the last LCAP, and really think about, are these the places where our students need the best support ongoing? Because these are dollars that you're going to be investing and committing for the next couple of years. So thank you, Manuel. I'll turn it over to you to have our other presenters.
Thank you. Next slide. So what we're going to do now is move into breakout rooms for 12 minutes, just to briefly reflect on what we just discussed and have you share with each other about what you just learned and what you're thinking about for your districts. Just a few norms for the breakout rooms. One, keep the focus on the LCAPs and also the expanded learning opportunity grants that you might be thinking about right now, or you have been thinking about it, I'm sure already. Ensure that everyone has opportunity to share or ask a question. There will be a slide in each breakout room for note taking. So we suggest that at the very beginning, you assign somebody to take notes, but everybody can take notes on that Google slide as well. Facilitators can share their screen as well. Well, actually, we won't have a facilitator for this, so that's not relevant for this. But be sure to assign a representative to share out to the whole group before we come back. So that's the task. Here's the questions to address. What are some of the recommendations in the report that can inform your work moving forward? Second question, what are some of the challenges that should be addressed moving forward in your district? 3, what are some opportunities that you are excited about? Because we want to make sure that we identify those things that we're excited about as we think about the next 3 years. And the note-taking slides are here, and we will post those in the chat right now so that you have them. But once again, make sure that at the very beginning, when you move to your breakout rooms, make sure that you assign somebody to be the note taker. And before you come back, find somebody that can report back to the group. Welcome back, everybody. Hope that everybody had a good discussion. I know that it's always never enough time at the very end, right? And I know that in my room, I think we were starting to have a really good thought, and then it got cut off and we came back. But that's how it is with Zoom meetings. But welcome back, everybody. I think we're going to move on to our next presentation for the purposes of time. But if you want to share, for those of you that were in the breakout room, I want to welcome everybody to just share one thought or one aha moment that you learned from your fellow members of the breakout room. If you can just put that in the chat, that would be awesome, so that we can collect that and so that other people can see that as well. So go ahead and do that if there's an idea that you want to share with everybody that you got from the breakout room. And with that, we're going to move on to our next presentation. I'm going to introduce Francisco Mesa. He is the Director of Categorical Programs from Whittier Union High School District. So Francisco, thank you for being here.
Sorry, I was finishing my my thought on the chat. I think that's an incomplete thought, but that's okay. Well, thank you, Californians Together, for having me here this evening. For us, it's a privilege to be able to share some of the things that we are doing. In this instance, it's in regards to English learner parents. So I'll go ahead and start by letting you know that one of the things that we are working on is on making sure that we truly engage our parents in what you guys were talking about in terms of two-way engagement and that parent-generated support. So one of the very first things that I just started working in the Whittier Union High School District after being gone for like 18 years. I did start my career with the Whittier Union High School District 30 years ago. And then for the past 18 years, I was in a couple of different districts, one of them being in Fresno, in the Fresno County area. I was in Glendale Unified School District, and now I'm back here in Los Angeles. So I don't want to miss this opportunity to give a shout out to my buddies and my family from the Fresno County Office of Education. But if we can go to the next slide. I'm going to spend 2 minutes just to quickly show you a video that highlighted what we are doing in the district in terms of our parent mentor program. So is it possible for you to click? Yeah, thank you.
When English isn't your first language. Our Giovanna Lara introduces us to the volunteers bridging the language gap and helping students achieve their
Could you raise the
college
volume?
dreams.
In this Whittier home, the kids aren't the only ones taking Zoom classes. Parents Jose and Yolanda Barrera just wrapped up 3 months of online Zoom sessions offered by the Whittier Union High School District.
It's been a blessing, being involved.
The pilot program, titled Padres Promotores del Camino al Éxito Universitario, is aimed at teaching parents of English learners key information to help their students get to college.
It was not easy, and being a immigrant from Mexico, both myself and my wife. So that was our goal, put our kids through college to get it through, and believe me, it's a full-time job.
It's not easy for many families who don't speak English at home. Their EL students often struggle to become proficient enough to access higher learning. Whittier Union is working to change that. 9% of the roughly 11,000 students in the district are English learners. 89% are Spanish speakers, and 71% are socioeconomically disadvantaged. This new program is tailored specifically for the parents of these students.
So that is the root of the problem, that we have a group of students that, regardless of our efforts in education, are not proficient enough to be able to succeed in their academic courses.
EL Support Programs Director Francisco Mesa says it's crucial for schools and parents to work together to help students transition out of the EL program by demonstrating academic language proficiency.
But we also want them to understand the system, the high school system, how to graduate, what courses are required for graduation, how to apply for a college or university, making sure that they know how to monitor their students' progress while in high school, that they know where resources are available on campus, that they know who to speak to if they ever need anything.
And here's the kicker. The program educates and trains these parents to become mentors and share their knowledge with other parents.
During the pandemic, parents are going crazy, researching how to help their teenagers to overcome this. Plus, we have our problem as an adult. So I think this program is just wonderful.
And it's an empowering personal experience for the parents, too.
A lot of these parents had no idea how to even use a computer. They didn't know how to open it, right? And so for them to actually create videos and presentations has been a really big deal.
It's a process, but what we learned in this particular program is that, the voice of the parents count.
There are now 11 trained parent mentors. The next group is scheduled for this coming August, and the program creators are hoping other school districts will follow in their footsteps. Giovanna Lara, ABC 7.
All right. So these are the parent mentors. And basically what happened was that in August, when I got to the Whittier Union High School District, one of the very first things that I needed to do was to find out what the needs of the parents in the community were as we were moving towards distance learning. So the reason why I said at the very beginning of the presentation that this was a two-way engagement in a parent-generated program is because one of the very first things that we did, Elba Solis is the counselor that helps me do this, is that we got together. We just we send a message, a loop message for the parents. We invited them to a DLAC meeting, all of the English learner parents of the district. We had about 54 parents. We talked to them. We asked what they needed, and what they told us was that they needed information about how to get their students to be successful in distance learning. And then from that, we came back to the group and said, okay, based on that information you gave us and your needs, we would like to put together a series of trainings, and we would like to meet with you on a weekly basis. So 11 out of the 50 some parents volunteered to be trained and to be given that information. As they were being trained, the parents themselves came to us and said, we love the information that we're getting and all the tools that we are learning so that we can access distance learning. But we would love for other parents in the districts to learn about this. And that's when we came up with the idea of, well, if once you are trained and we go through a series of 3 months weekly meetings, if you are willing, we can look at the idea of making you parent mentors. And the idea was to then the parents who were going through this 3-month training would then turn around and help us train other parents. So basically the way that we do it is we find out from our 7 high schools what their parent programs might need. And if they need a training on reclassification, for example, or they need a training on mindfulness, then Elba, our counselor, and I work with the 11 parents. And then once we train them on that specific topic, then those parents go and help us as we are training and providing workshops for our schools. So we basically created a trainer of trainers type of a program that is where the parent mentors are some of the parents that are helping us also teach other parents. So one of the very first things that we did, we needed to make sure that our vision and our mission for the parent mentored align with the mission and the vision of the district. And our vision here in our district is to achieve and maintain excellence by training our parent volunteers and in promoting that mentality of road to college success. And our mission in the district is to do whatever it takes to prepare our students. So we needed to make sure that we would do whatever it took to train our parents. Thank you. So one of the very first things that we did when we started working with the parents was train them on their roles and responsibilities. I'm not going to read all of them because of time, but you can see that it was very important that they took that idea of becoming ambassadors to the district very seriously. And that's the reason why we went through that. The other thing that we did, Elba and I, as the people that were putting the curriculum together, we just brainstormed all the different topics that we wanted to share with the parents during the 3-month course on that weekly meetings that we were going to have. We would meet on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. every week for 3 weeks. And you can see there, again, I'm not going to read the list, but you can see the different things that we ended up training the parents on. And then we also, we didn't limit ourselves to training the parents on Wednesdays, but we also provided them with extended learning opportunities that they can do on other days during the week. And then you can see at the very, very end of that list that we have our possible next steps, because we're always looking for ways to validate, to make them feel that they're appreciated, and also to showcase what they are doing. So one of our goals, for example, is to present at CASBO and to present the program at CAVIT 2022. And then eventually, if this continues year after year, we would like to apply for the Golden Bell Award for the program. So this is the schedule that we put together based on the brainstorm that you just saw on the previous slide. We took the 3 months. We selected the day of the week was Wednesday, and every Wednesday we would develop a different topic so that we could train the parents, and then they could become our parent mentors. Once they went through the program at the end of the 3 months, so we started in August, we ended in October. The parents had homework because we decided to do a graduation ceremony, and their responsibility was to each of the parents develop a presentation, and it could be a video, it could be a PowerPoint presentation. So we took the parents, like Elba said, parents who had no knowledge on how to utilize computers, and all of a sudden they were putting together trainings, video trainings for parents, so that the parents in our district could go to the website. They could click on example, for example, on the training on stress, and they would be taken to learn how to deal with stress. Or if they wanted to learn how to navigate the ARIS parent portal, another parent created a video to show other parents how they could navigate the ARIS portal. And at the end of the 3 months, we had a graduation ceremony. Remember that for some of these parents, they probably have never received a high school diploma or any type of an academic diploma. So we wanted to validate their efforts, and we had a ceremony with virtual fireworks and pomp and circumstances. We gave them a shirt and then a certificate. So then I did talk a little bit about what we were looking in terms of looking ahead. So we're always looking for opportunities to showcase the parents, but more importantly, we are looking at August during the summer, July or August, we're gonna have a parent mentor retreat so that we can start looking at our next steps. And also we are looking at the incoming 9th grade parents. We wanna have our cohort 2 of our parent mentors that are going to be trained so that they can also continue to help us at the schools, providing trainings or creating videos or generating different resources for the parents. And that basically is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. And I see a lot of good questions coming in from folks in the chat. Please keep those coming. We're going to have time for Q&A after our next presenter.
Oh, just one more thing. All the PowerPoint and the slide can be made available to whoever is interested. I'll put the link on the chat.
Thank you, Francisco. And for all attendees, we will be sharing all of the slides that you are seeing today. We're going to send out an email to all folks that attended after this session to make sure that you have all the resources as well. Thank you. So next, I'm happy to introduce one of the districts that we actually highlighted a few times in our learning continuity and attendance plan report. This is Sylvia Yanez. She is an English learner director at Calexico Unified School District, all the way down in Southern California, next to the U.S.-Mexico border. Thank you for being here, Sylvia.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for the invite to be here. It's my pleasure to be here. And I'm here with the rest of everyone else learning from your presentation as well. Thank you, Manuel, and thank you everyone for sharing some of the beautiful things that you are doing at your districts. So as you mentioned, Calexico Unified School District is the southern region in California. We are a border town between Mexico, California, and Arizona. If you keep going south, you're gonna go to Arizona. If you keep going or to Mexico. So that's what we are. We have a large number of English language learners. If you could go to the next slide, please. Something that I was sharing with the team previously is that our numbers of English language learners have always been large, but we have noticed that drastically, and we're thinking due to the pandemic, our numbers have lower as of this year, but we're always between the 5,000s. And if you notice back 3 years ago, we were close to 6,000. We were close up to 62% of our population being English language learners. Next slide, please. So what we're doing right now and what we have done before, it's provide services to our newcomers. We have newcomer programs for kids who have less than 1 year in US. We call it newcomers or alternative programs. And of course, we're also offering the instructor English immersion program for all English language learners. That's something that we keep focusing because of the number of ELs that we have every year. Thank you. We, of course, we also provide our English language mainstream for ELs who have reasonable fluency and daily designated ELD for all, and especially at the elementary level and junior high. Next slide, please. One of the things that that we are doing in our district is that we have what we call ELITs or English language intervention teachers. We have 7 elementary school sites, so there's one English intervention teacher at each site. The services that they provide are K-6, and what we do, how we do it, it's we get together with them. I get together with them. We pull out the data. We identify those kids who have not made progress probably in the last 2-3 years. Of course, we also look into the ones that are at risk in LTELs, and then also the newcomers. And what I would like to make sure that we understand is that this is above and beyond their designated ELD. So all ELs have a designated ELD, but in our schedule, we have intervention times already set up. So during that intervention time is when our ELITs can pull out that English language learners who may need extra support, and for about 8 weeks. And then we do a pre and a post test. We have them together on small groups of no more than 12. Usually the numbers are 10. We don't recommend really a high number of English language learners for an intervention class. We're using TEL from Pearson as a pre and post assessment. And the way we're doing it right now, it's because it's been quite a challenge for everyone. We're doing it during asynchronous time. We have built some time in our schedule where we can pull it out during that time. And that's how we are addressing their needs. The services that we're providing are Monday through Thursday. We're using different applications or different programs to address their need. And since last year, we have been providing trainings on different platforms, programs, even trainings on Google Classroom, Seesaw, because this was quite a challenge from us and for everyone, I'm sure, from direct teaching, do it in person, now to do it all remotely. So that's something that we have started last year and that we have been providing this year. Something else that we're also doing, we are doing integrated ELD and designated ELD throughout this year, keeping in mind that we were aware that this was going to be quite a challenge for our English language learners, especially if they may not be able to have that support at home, where parents may not be fluent enough to help them with their work. Next. And so we have in our cycles, we have about 4 cycles a year. Our cycles are about 8 weeks. We've been doing this for the last 5 years. It is funded through Title III. And our ELITs participate, they meet with me monthly, but they also, because they're at their site, addressing the needs of the population in that particular site, they also participate in the grade level meetings, PLC meetings. We review data and periodically with me and their site principal. And one of the recommendations that I always make sure is that our English intervention teachers, once we have identified together the need, that we go and meet with the site principal to share with them, okay, this is what I see, and this is what I see that there's areas that we may need to work on. It could be listening, speaking, or it could be reading and writing. Because we not only look at the overall scores, but we also look at the domains, where they add on the domains, and if there's a particular domain that it's keeping them from moving up to the next level. Next slide, please. And I thank you. I think that's the end of my presentation. But one thing that I want to mention again is that we have been providing trainings for our English intervention teacher this year for integrated ELD, designated ELD. We also work on identifying essential standards during summer before we started school year. And so that's the way we're been working together along as well with our academic support teachers, with our which are our coaches at the site, and with me and the principal, all of us together, making sure that we address that need of our English language learners during this time. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Sylvia. And one of the things that I noticed just from reading the description and also the presentation is how the information is being used, and how the teachers, the EL intervention teachers, are also helping other teachers and other school staff in informing the services that are provided to English learners.
I'm sorry, no. We have also academic support teachers who are being trained along with our ELETs. And so our academic support teachers also provide support to the ELETs.
Oh, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you. So we'll move on to questions, and we actually have a few questions about the ELIT program, Sylvia. So we'll start with some of those that came in, and a lot of them are just about how the program is ran and some technical things. One of them is who supervises the teachers of the district level? Is it the principals, or is it at the district level that's being done?
It's at the principal level. What I do is meet with them, like I said, monthly, to make sure that we're doing the monitoring, who we're servicing, helping them with the data, identifying the kids, the students, but ultimately our ELITs are at the site, and I request for them to meet with the principal so that we can make sure that the principal is not only in agreement, but it's aware of the needs of our English language learners and what we will be addressing in the cycle. But they're supervised by the site principal.
Thank you. Another question is, are ELIT teachers certified credentialed teachers or instructional aides? And how many of those teachers are at each site?
They are credentialed teachers and they are experienced teachers, and there's one per site.
Thank you. This question is about long-term English learners. So Sylvia or Francisco can answer this question. But how do other LEA support LTELs at the high school level? What is working for teachers and students? So if there's anything that you can share about what might be working for your districts to answer that question.
Because I'm dealing directly with the parent group, we are trying to impact our students by impacting the parents. So what we're trying to do, in the past, the counselor position, that by the way is 100% funded through Title III, because a counselor works only with English learner parents and for English learner parents. So our hope is that once the parents are have access to our resources, are more educated about how to maximize those resources, and then help us train other parents in the at the school level, that then that support transfers to the student, since the parents are going to be able to access the resources of the district a lot better.
The way we're doing it in Calexico, we have a designated ELD for our LTELs, but we have a different position from ELITs at the high school level. We have what we call English specialist. And what she does is she monitors the progress of our students, the placement, meets with the students and parents when needed to go over some of the requirements for reclassification, for college, maybe for a CTE pathway, and maybe because we have a few cases, for instance, of students that are newcomers that may benefit from AB 2121 in order for them to be able to graduate. And so our EL specialist works together with the counselor. The counselor is still in charge of making sure that the students graduate, but the EL specialist, that extra help to identify them early enough to make sure that they're on the right track or on the right path, either for college, career, CTE, graduation, and reclassification. And the EL specialist is the one that meets with parents, the ones that provides training for parents on reclassification. And not only that, presentations for the students on the importance of being reclassified as well.
And Manuel, I just wanted to add that, so for those of you who may not know, we just want to announce that Californians Together is going to be releasing an updated report on long-term English learners in June. Right, this is sort of like a 10-year retrospective on how far we have come since Reparable Harm came out. And really, and Manuel can speak to a little bit more because he's actually doing the work, really focusing on what are those promising practices that we see happening in districts so that we can share that so other districts can learn from each other. And that will be coming out about mid-June.
And there's another question that I see here that is very important. So yeah, definitely look out for the report in June, and happy to talk to any of you here if you have any ideas or practices that you want to share as well. But one thing that we're always thinking about is capacity. And we know that most districts in California are not large districts, they're small districts or medium-sized districts at least. So any ideas, Sylvia or Francisco, for how a small district could do a parent mentor program, or for Sylvia, how small districts can build capacity to provide these types of interventions for English learners?
I think that for us, sustainability was very important. Sustainability, replicability, and making something that's simple. So I had experience in Fresno. I worked in a very small district of 4,500 students. And now I'm in a district of 11,000 students. And I can see a program such as the Parent Mentor being a very simple thing that you can put together. You saw the brainstorm that I showed you on the PowerPoint. That is just a list of items that we thought would benefit the parents in terms of learning that they can do. We looked around at our existing structures because in our districts, we are very careful not to implement or to embrace any and all initiatives that come our way, right? So we look for our existing structures, and then we work together to make sure that we provide the resources to the parents. So a small district, our large districts can generate a brainstorm of topics that would benefit the parents. They can look at their existing resources. They can convene the parents in a meeting, find out who would like to volunteer to be a parent mentor so that they can prepare to work with a staff member in the future and provide trainings to the sites. It is that simple, and it's something that a district can implement within a matter of months.
In regards to the question, from being from a large district to what a small district can do, and I don't know, I was thinking of something like a combination of having our ELIT, our English intervention teacher, and EL specialist. Instead of hiring two people, maybe you can hire one, work a job description where this teacher can provide some direct support for those kids that need the extra support above and beyond the designated ELD, but then also time in the schedule where this staff member can meet with the students, make presentations in the classrooms, or meet with parents to go over the importance of reclassification, and not only the importance, the criteria. Sometimes it's just a matter of informing our parents the criteria and the students themselves, because there's been times where they have said like, oh, I didn't know why I was taking this test every year. Okay, now I know what's the criteria. And so maybe a combination of that, those two job descriptions for those small districts, that, you know, that maybe funding could be a problem, or maybe having two people could be a problem.
If I also may add, you know, when we're looking at the parent mentor program, we're also looking at ways to impact the classroom directly. So we're also looking at something very similar to Sylvia's model, where we get teachers sharing best practices and collaborating with each other. We're looking at the possibility of teachers helping other teachers, and also the idea of student mentors, where you get a cadre of teachers, a cadre of students, a cadre of parents, but the idea is that you train them so that they can help their peers. So if it's a student group, then once the students are trained, then they would help us be mentors to other students. Or if it's a cadre of teachers, you get that cadre of teachers to be the mentors for other teachers, just like we're having the parent model. So there's always opportunities for growth.
Another question that I see is about the ELIT program. So that's more for Sylvia. When ELs are pulled out, are pulled by ELIT teachers, are they missing the core instruction? And then what are some of the strategies for districts if this happens?
Okay, no, we're not. We cannot pull them out during core instruction. What we have done in our schedule, we have assigned times for interventions, and it's since they're K-6, so that for instance, the intervention time for second graders might be from 9 to 9:40. For third graders might be from 9:50 to 10:30. So that we can have it throughout the day for the different grade levels, and not during any core subject areas, neither ELD. The designated ELD is for all ELs. What was your second question? I'm sorry.
I think that was a question. So when they're being pulled out, are they being pulled out of the core classes? I think that was a question.
Thank you.
Another question is about assessments. So I think I have two assessment questions. The first one is a TEL assessment aligned to the Pearson ILIT program? The second assessment question is, what primary language assessments do you utilize to evaluate the student's primary language? So that second question can be for both of you.
The TEL, it's not. I don't think it's not aligned to the ILIT. I know that we're using ILIT at the high school level for our newcomers, but it's not aligned. And the second question was about newcomers, primary language. We haven't had an assessment per se. What we do, our teachers do like a small interview with our kids and a small writing activity. And that's how we determine how fluent they are in their primary language.
Yeah, for our newcomers, we do administer the Spanish LAS. We've been doing that for years. Unfortunately, because it's a paper pencil, when the pandemic hit, we are no longer able to administer the Spanish LAS. But I did find out from the company that they do provide an electronic version, and we're in the process of looking into that. But we've been using the Spanish LAS to evaluate the proficiency, the Spanish proficiency of our incoming ELs.
Thank you. Something else that I need to add is that when we have newcomers, especially at the junior high and high school level, because as I mentioned, we're a border town, so we have newcomers every year at different grade levels. We have Spanish courses. And in that Spanish course, that's the number one thing that our teachers would do. It's an assessment to make sure that we place them correctly at the Spanish level that they need.
The other thing that we do for our Spanish speakers is, and I'm sure Sylvia probably does that as well, is the seal of biliteracy to encourage the students to continue working on their Spanish or any other language, because we do it for different languages, not just Spanish, or dialects. I know that last year we had a student who got a seal of biliteracy because they spoke an indigenous language from Mexico.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very important. Next question is about funding of the teachers. How are the ELIT teachers funded? Are they funded 100% out of Title III?
We were doing it 100% Title III, and then because of our funding has been changing, we do a small percentage Title I and Title III, but the majority is Title III. And we started off this 5 years ago, it was fully Title III.
For us, because the counselor supports directly the English learner parents, it's 100% out of Title III.
Thank you. And this is a question that I think it's related to the work that we're doing, but it's specific to our newcomer students. And it's actually directed at you, Sylvia, but Francisco, you can help answer it as well if you have anything that you want to add. But can you address a little bit your programs for unaccompanied children as life students? And do these students go directly to newcomer programs?
Right now, that was something that I was sharing previously to our meeting with Francisco and the team, that so far we haven't, as far as I know, I'm not aware that we have done any unaccompanied children right here in Calexico. And what I was sharing, I have seen the Border Patrol going around more frequently around the streets in Calexico, but I have not been aware of an unaccompanied student coming to our district. But we do offer the newcomer program for 2 years for those kids who they're new in US. We have it K6, and at the junior high level and at the high school level, we have also what we call a primary language program, also for newcomers at those grade levels.
2 of our 5 comprehensive high schools have a newcomer program. And in terms of the unaccompanied minors, I know that the Long Beach Convention Center just became a migrant center. I think that we are beginning to feel a little bit of the impact. All of a sudden, we got 3 brand new students, and they were placed in foster homes with very little information, no documentation. So I don't think that they are unaccompanied minors, but then we will never know because that's private information at this point for us. But we are beginning to feel the need for us to start preparing and being proactive. I already have a meeting with some of the EL directors at the sites, because we need to start thinking about what we are going to do in the event that we get these students who are coming to us with a lot of the times with very little educational background, no documentation of educational records, and also traumatized in many ways.
Thank you. And I think this is the last question that I see in the chat. If folks have any other questions, you can add them, or you can raise your hand. But how are we helping students that are in dual language programs with academic English so that they get the academic English that they need to be eventually reclassified?
In my district, we do not have a dual immersion program at the high school level. Not at this point. We're looking into the possibility of one, but we don't have one right now.
We don't have a dual program in Calexico either. It's something that we're being promoted during our LCAP meetings with our parents. As a matter of fact, we just had one about 3 weeks ago, and we always request input from our parents And the majority of them, they want to do the transition into English. They feel, because we're a border town, I sense that the parents feel very comfortable with the fact that they're fluent in Spanish and that their son or daughter is fluent in Spanish, so they don't feel the need to be in a dual immersion program.
Thank you. And I also want to thank Renee Bryant for dropping in some resources for supporting immigrant and refugee students. Look for those in the chat. Thank you for sharing that. And I see Norma is also sharing a few resources that could be helpful to folks here. Seeing that we're almost out of time, we're going to transition to the next steps in the program. But thank you for answering the questions. Next slide, please. I just want to make sure that you know about the future community of practice webinars that we're going to be holding in the next couple of weeks. April 21, so that would be tomorrow. We're having an English Learner Leadership and Legacy book club. The first session of that book club that will be focused on the San Diego story. You can see the link on the chat, but it's also in that slide. The next day, we're hosting an integrated and designated ELD Institute for secondary teachers. It's being hosted by San Diego County, part one of it. If you're interested, you can register through that link. And then May 4th is going to be another community of practice focused on powerful summer and expanded learning opportunities for English learners. And I'm also happy to say that just today, we finished and released guidance on what we hope to see from district English learning expanded learning opportunity grants. So I'll post a link to that post that has some of the recommendations that we have for that as well. Next slide. But the last ask that I have before you leave is to leave us with your wisdom and thoughts. And we ask that you click on the Menti Cloud link that is being posted by Crystal or Shilonin. It's also on the slide. But the question is, what is one thing you would want to see in your LCAP? So after hearing from Sylvia and Francisco, learning from each other, what is one thing that you're looking forward to seeing in your LCAP this year and also in the following years? So take a minute and thanks for sharing your wisdom with us. Shilonin just posted the link to the Menti Cloud.
I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. Off from my city, off from my home. We're flying up no ceiling when we in our zone. I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh, I can't take my eyes off of it, moving so phenomenally. Come on, like the way we rock it, so don't stop. And under the lights when everything goes, nowhere to hide.
Oh, and I see that, I apologize, I see that Mariela had a question. So Mariela, would you like to ask the question while folks are doing the Menti Cloud?
Yes. Hi, my name is Mariela Cuellar. Hola, gracias por toda la información. My question is about transparency and accountability when it comes to funding. I would like to know how your district distribute funding that come, especially in titles. Well, right now we're talking about Title 3, but in terms of Title 1, 2, 3, and many of.
You're on mute. Oh, there she goes.
How do you distribute the money, and how do you?
You're on mute, yeah.
Oh, sorry. And how do you distribute the money, and how do you keep accountability within your district and also within the schools?
Sylvia maybe wants to answer that.
I'm sorry, didn't catch the question quite well. It was, you were breaking up, or at least.
I can try to answer some of the parts of the question. In terms of transparency, we are very diligent to make sure that we share the CANAP and our Title I support services and budgets with our DLAC. The same thing with the LPAC, I mean the LCAP, or even the extended learning and grant opportunities grant. We get the input from our parents. We have advisory meetings, we have task force meetings, we have DLAC meetings. And during those meetings, not only do we get input, but we also share the budgets for the different plans, whether it's the learning accountability plan, or the Title III plans, or even the single plans for student achievements. They're shared at the site levels. Those are shared with the ELACs.
Thank you. Same thing here. We have a DLAC, and we have been able to keep meeting with them since last year via Zoom. And so we provide the Title III addendum now plan. We go over the LCAP with them. That's one of the things our assistant superintendent makes sure that she presents to them. As I mentioned to you before, she had already presented about 3 weeks ago. We always share our Title I monies as well with our site principals and with our DLAC and school site council. And during our SPSA, our sites make sure that that ELIT program or intervention that it's addressed there, but it's only part of the goal and the objective, so that they use the funding, the proper funding from their site.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for the question, Mariela. We're always happy to have parents involved in these conversations, and thank you for coming here to ask questions and learn, and to also share your perspectives. Once again, I want to thank everybody for participating in this community of practice. Big hand, how do you say, hand of applause? I forget how you say it, but big claps to Sylvia
Big
Yanez.
Round of applause.
Round of applause. I forgot the word. Big round of applause to
Thank you. If I may add, as a recommendation for those who have DLAC and school site council and LCAP, especially since I lead the DLAC, we make sure that any of the conversation or any of the questions that parents engage in regarding the services, regarding the funding, regarding what the ELITs do and all that, we make sure that we state it in our minutes as well as the response.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Sylvia. Once again, thank you, Sylvia Yanez from Calexico Unified School District. Thank you, Francisco Mesa from Whittier Union High School District. Thanks for everybody for being here. We appreciate you taking the time to learn and to share with all of us today. We look forward to seeing you in our future community of practice meetings and future sessions that we have. Thank you.